Open Your Eyes is brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.
And good morning. Welcome to Open Your Eyes.
Start your morning right.
I'm Marlene Cuellar.
And I'm Gavin Courtney.
And thank you for joining us this morning.
Yep, it's a beautiful morning.
Yeah.
Sunrise was nice if you caught that too.
Definitely. But, you know, a tough morning too, I think, in the country. Yesterday, we saw the uproar in the Cayo district as the community members out there were responding to the recent shooting death of 29-year-old BDF private Jesse Escobar. And up until a bit after 9, the community members were still out there. They had set a fire, some tires were set on fire, and thankfully things de-escalated just a bit after curfew, and we didn't have any violence or anything take place as a result.
Yes, of course, those scenes from last night were, of course, very concerning, but of course, under the feeling in the community is understandable given the circumstances which gave rise to the protest. And just for context, this was a shooting which occurred on Sunday night in the Santa Familia village in the Cayo district. And of course, this has caused a huge public uproar because the incident was actually caught on security camera footage. And of course, that footage has been seen widely by many across the country and abroad. And of course, people are very upset because the footage clearly depicts, Jesse Escobar being shot when he wasn't. He didn't seem to be any sort of physical real threat. Yeah. He wasn't armed, and of course, the direct shot and the instant killing, of course, especially in front of other persons, including his family. Have really, those circumstances have really put into focus, several issues which have created a lot of anger, a lot of sadness, a lot of frustration in not only the Santa Familia community, but all across the country.
Yeah, you know, yesterday when the Santa Familia Village Council posted on their Facebook page, they were asking residents to put out signs and posters demanding justice for Jesse. And we began to see some of the beginning of the actions. In fact, it was very clear that they were not going to sit by quietly and allow this to take place without showing their discontent with the situation. And in communities like that, everyone knows everyone, so it's really, it's deeply personal for them. But you're right, I've been thinking about this since yesterday, and there are many things about this particular shooting, this security force related shooting, that is extremely disturbing. But definitely, I think one of the things that I still woke up thinking about was the fact that it happened in front of his loved ones. You have a toddler who has experienced something that no child should ever experience, and it was just so callously done with no consideration for the ramifications of course, the immediate loss of life, but the extent of trauma that the family members and especially the child will now endure for the rest of her life.
Absolutely. It's a really tragic circumstance when you think about all of the factors which you just mentioned. Yeah. And I think that one of the things which also makes this sort of aggravating to the public is that based on the official reports which were just coming out, if we start by just the fact that it was reported initially that the initial response, it was actually made by one police officer and two BDF soldiers. Of course, one of the BDF soldiers was the one who actually committed the shooting, but it was a response to what was reported to have been an issue about masks and proper mask wearing. And, this has brought into focus this big issue about the police and their engagement with the public, especially in the context of the enforcement of the COVID-19 regulations. And it wasn't very long ago that the whole country was reeling from the death of Laddie Gillett, who was, of course, shot under circumstances where it seemed as though he and his friends were just being pursued for a breach of a curfew. So, and of course, Laddie ended up losing his life, and his at least one of his other acquaintances was alleged to have been brutalized. So, it's really bringing into focus a lot of issues related to police brutality, violence, and just the nature of their engagement with the community on a whole.
And a sense of rationality. I mean, let's put this into perspective. COVID regulations are put in place to preserve life.
Exactly.
You know, we're wearing masks to protect each other from not getting sick and potentially dying. We've implemented a curfew to minimize people from interacting or socializing after hours and potentially spreading a disease that can kill us. So imagine that your response to the breaking of these regulations is to threaten death by pointing a gun at someone, as we've seen in instances that did not result in death, and in the specific cases of Laddie Gillett, for example, and now Jesse Escobar, they lose their life because of it. It just, there is no way we can make sense of it. And what really has, I think, gotten people particularly upset is that the security footage exists, that it has been made public, and that everyone has seen firsthand how things unfolded. And I understand that it is incredibly graphic, and I know that that is a major cause for concern. I understand the re-victimization that people talk about. But sometimes when we look at a situation and we report it very often, it's more important that you're able to see it, because this could have been a police report, and the first police report before the issue, before the security footage was leaked, was saying that the BDF who fired the shot was being aggressed with a pint bottle, and then people could clearly see for themselves. These statements are made, and no one, when there are no witnesses or no cameras to tell the tale, we simply believe them.
Yes, absolutely, and I think that this is an issue that it's not unique to Belize. Of course, we've seen this issue arise, particularly in the United States, over the past few years, when a lot of discussion has been had recently about the ways in which the police and the security forces in general really enforce laws. And I think that when you think about it in the context of Belize, this particular incident also raises a lot of issues and concerns. And I think that just based on experience and based on what we have seen reported in the news, I think that first of all, you said you spoke about the rationality or the reason of how you implement or how you enforce the law. So the question, of course, to my mind, which first arises, is how is it that a BDF soldier is the one who's going to respond, is going to be part of the response to this? As we know, BDF soldiers, they're not police officers. Their mandate isn't necessarily to protect, to enforce laws in the way that the police officers do it. And as a matter of fact, it's only been in recent times when we've seen, and by recent I mean in the past perhaps 10, 15 years, where we've seen that sort of real joint engagement enforcing laws. We've seen it in Belize City, of course, in states of emergency, and of course, sometimes even at checkpoints, and when they are out and about, of course, they have huge weapons. Sometimes police do as well. And for minor sort of infractions, traffic checkpoints, all sorts of things, the public has to engage with police and other security forces. And of course, the assumption or the likely consequence then is a situation like this where they have the power,
Yeah.
when that exists, there's always a risk of abuse.
Yeah, let's take a look. You know, Dwayne Moody went out to Santa Familia yesterday to hear from relatives and loved ones to find out what happens. We're going to take a look back at that video this morning to put it all into perspective.
What was a peaceful Sunday for the Escobar family in Santa Familia village in the Cayo district ended tragically just after 7 o'clock that night. Jesse Escobar, his wife, their daughter, and 2 of his friends went to Branchmouth Stop and Shop store a short distance from the family home in the village. Within minutes, a verbal exchange between Escobar and a BDF and police joint patrol ended with one of the soldiers pointing his rifle at Escobar and shooting him dead. An employee of the shop shares a first-hand account of what happened.
So the police told him, put on your fucking mask. And he didn't pay attention to the police and just watched the police. When the police told him again to put on a mask, then I came with the person and I told him, you know what, put on the mask. Becky, no be no problem, just put on your mask. And he said, all right, I will put on my mask. He put on his mask. Then 2 of the other one came out and they had their mask on, but they take it down. And the police say, Uno doesn't understand to put on Uno mask. Then one of them was trying to like cursing him and telling him things bad to the police, right? And then the police came and he said, you doesn't talk to me like that or things like that. And he bat him here on his head. When Jesse, my cousin, came out from the shop and he's saying, what is happening here? When Jesse reached, he just walked towards the police, but he didn't touch the police anything. So when the police shot the first warning, and it didn't gun up.
A leaked copy of the purported statement recorded by the officer Juan Carlos Morales says that he, along with 2 BDF soldiers, Corporal R. Alcocer and Private R. Valencia, were conducting foot patrol within the village when they came to the store. He says that the deceased is his cousin, and then goes on to say that the men carried pint bottles in their hands and were not wearing their masks properly. After informing them of the offense they were committing, he says that Escobar and his friends claimed to be members of 18th Street. According to Morales, he proceeded to detain all men, but while trying to do so, they grabbed bottles and attempted to hurl missiles towards the lawmen. This is when he drew his police-issued weapon and fired a warning shot, but the firearm did not go off. The statement continues to say that Escobar threatened to take away Private Valencia's firearm, and despite warnings for him to back down, Jesse advanced to Valencia, and so he fired a shot that caught the deceased on the chest. The entire ordeal was caught on camera, and most of what has been recorded by Officer Morales contradicts what was captured on surveillance footage.
He stopped when the shots came out. He stopped. Then he says again, if you want to shoot me. And he moved towards the police, but the police was so not close to him. He was so like far from him. When he just put like 2 steps towards the police, the other soldier shot him there. Her daughter and take the daughter inside. And I went inside and locked the door, but we were seeing all the things that were happening. Just open a little bit of the door. And when he said there was pointing at the other guy and tell them to kneel down and stay there and don't move. Meanwhile, the body was throwing blood from his nose, from his mouth, and you know, I don't know, I'm still in shock with that.
The BDF soldier fired 1 single shot, which caught the individual in the left chest. The person fell to the ground and to his death.
Sir, is it disturbing that in the video, law enforcement are heard saying, and I quote, next boxer, next boxer?
Of course, it is disturbing. Some of the comments used prior to and after the shooting are damning. And those are things that we are looking after or looking into. The file is being compiled and will be sent to the Director of Public Prosecution Office for guidance as to how we are going to deal with the matter.
Today, his brother, relatives, and other villagers were at the cemetery making preparations for Escobar's final resting place. Arwin Escobar says he heard the gunshots and later found out that his brother was the victim.
I then heard some gunshots, right? I told my wife, I think that a bar. So I went out, and when I went out, I see my little sister crying, and she told me they just shot Jesse. So to me, a lot of things come to my head. I wonder what happened. I went there. When I went, his body was already in the ground, right? So when I went there, I actually wanted to ask because I know the police officer, not too good, but I know him. I work with him already. So I wanted to go. He was a good distance from me. I wanted to go and ask them, what happened? Who killed my brother? When I came out to go to see what happened, they both shots again. I don't know if it's to the ear because it's dark or towards us.
Social media is abuzz as residents express outrage about the shooting. Compal Chester Williams says that after viewing the circulated video, he believes that the use of force was unjustifiable.
In my humble opinion, it is not justified. I believe that the force was to some extent excessive, but like I said before, it is a matter for the DPP to decide. It does not mean that because the force use is not justified, simply means that it is murder. Unjustified force could also mean manslaughter. It could also be manslaughter by negligence.
Jesse was enlisted with the Belize Defense Force for 9 years and had been working with the Light Engineer Company. Dwayne Moody for News 5.
Yes.
And of course, hearing of course the family members just makes it even more upsetting and real. You can't imagine what they're going through, and the whole community, because even all of us just watching that and everything, you get that all of the emotions which come up,
course,
No,
definitely. I'm left speechless because, as I said, here we are again. And we were speaking about, just the rationality behind pointing a gun at somebody or threatening to shoot somebody for breaking COVID regulations. But there are other two observations that I made in that video that I think tells us, they're very concerning to me. One was kind of the shop goer who just walks past the scene of someone having a gun pointed at them. And this is no judgment towards that person. You're doing what you need to do to survive. But it's almost kind of telling that we can walk past a scene like that. And we do it all the time. We see stop and searches taking place that definitely look inappropriate. We see scenes like that and we move past it, one, for fear, and two, because it's become such a common occurrence to see this type of security force, civilian interaction, that it's almost a norm. That was one thing. And the other thing is, I understand that the family and the friends were probably in shock and in fear of their life. So responding to someone who's just been shot in that moment, if you're not just in absolute shock or terror from seeing it happen, you're probably fearful of moving and being next. But we had 2 police officers there. We had 2 other security forces there, and none of them checked to see if he was even still alive, or made a call to get an ambulance to potentially save his life. There was no action made. More so, there were just threats made to the other people who were there. And that entire, when you put it all into context, and we started off with what I think is still the most concerning thing, that something like this can happen in front of his wife and his child. As I said, I hear the cries from the people from Santa Familia and the rest of the country, and I think when you put it all into context, you can understand why. And the question is, what will be done?
Absolutely, because I think that one of the things that also brings it close to home is that, you can easily, one can easily think, could I be next? Based on what, whatever rule I break, whether it's COVID regulated or not. What's the response going to be if I should encounter any member of the security forces and I may be in the wrong, I may have Or I may, in their view, be wrong, because that is another thing. So, because that's another thing, and you brought that up earlier in the conversation when we spoke about the initial police report, because when it comes to the public, there's always a sort of their word versus ours. When it comes down to it, if it does go to court or something like that. And one, of course, wants to trust security forces. They have a mandate to protect and serve, as we often say, and one would want to feel confident in those, in the forces. But when we see incidents like this, in addition to all that we have in the past, and it really, as you said, raises the question about what will be done, about this incident and on a whole, reform in a larger sense.
And I think that's the thing, because we have to talk about how, and I don't know the details of the training, but how are police officers or BDF in this case trained to respond to different situations? How do you gauge what the threat level is? And I'm not trained to be a part of either one of these forces, but when we look at the video as civilians, we can tell the level of threat.
Exactly, and one would think that even if there was a threat, as being, security forces, and as you said really early on, having the task to preserve life, you would think that in any sort of situation like this, the job would be to de-escalate the situation, lower the tension, even if they're being aggressive, see what are the alternatives or how to respond to ensure that things happen smoothly. And, the last resort really should be violence. And of course, death is, I shouldn't even, after the last resort. But of course, we'll continue to bring you coverage of these events in our nightly newscast as well. But we do have to keep moving with our show this morning. And
so we'll have an update, of course, on that and the uprising in Santa Familia, the protest that we saw last night in our newscast tonight. But we know that this is the topic of conversation on everyone's mind this morning, and ours included. But we got to get moving into our show, and we're going to shift gears quite radically to some motivation, which will get you through the day. And that means it's time for our eye opener. And our eye opener, taken from dailyom.com, goes like this. Taking one step at a time makes life much easier to navigate, rather than always looking at the big picture. The years of our life do not arrive all at once. They greet us day by day. With the descent of each setting sun, we are able to rest our heads and let the world take care of itself for a while. We may rest assured throughout the night, knowing that the dawn will bring with it a chance to meet our lives anew, donning fresh perspectives and dream-inspired hopes. The hours that follow, before we return to sleep once more, are for us to decide how we want to live and learn, laugh, and grow. Our lives are sweeter and more manageable because we must experience in this way, one day at a time. The way we show up for our lives today and tomorrow has an enormous effect on who we will be and what we will be experiencing years from now. If we can remain fully engaged in the day at hand, enjoying all it has to offer and putting our energy into making the most of it, we will find that we are perfectly ready and capable to handle any future when it arrives.
I like that eye-opener, and it's something that I like to tell myself a lot, just to try to take things one day at a time.
We can sing the song too,
I don't, wait, which song is that?
There's the old song, one day at a time. I shouldn't sing. I really shouldn't sing.
No, I was just going to say though, just by way of an analogy, and I use it for myself, is that, so for example, I like to play tennis, I like to watch tennis as well. So there's a big tournament that's going on right now, the US Open is playing, so some of you sports fans might know. But my favorite player is going for his 21st Grand Slam, and everybody always asks him, it's Novak Djokovic, and they're always asking him, like, don't you feel the pressure, and how, all of this is on you, you could be, and he says, well, each match is just like, I try to take it one match, each point is not no different than the last one. And with that, you keep yourself grounded, focus on what's right in front of you rather than getting stressed about the things. And as it says, take it one step at a time, and trust yourself, and it'll work out for the best.
All right, and I think that's great in all circumstances. Whether it is something very challenging that is up in front of you, whether you're going through something difficult, or if you're attacking a goal, it's being able to kind of just focus on what's right in front of you for the moment. I do think big picture is important, but I think that you can get overwhelmed by it because you don't lay out all the steps that are necessary.
And then especially like if you're in the beginning, you think you have this big thing ahead of you and you can get discouraged, but take it one step at a time, one day at a time, and you'll get there eventually.
All right, but we're going to keep things moving this morning into our weather update and or forecast prepared by forecaster Cristel Rosales. Goes like this. The general situation is for a relatively moist airflow to prevail.
And over the next 24 hours, we are expecting sunny skies with some cloudy spells today, and then partly cloudy to cloudy times at night. A few showers and isolated thunderstorms will linger over the south this morning, and then they will redevelop later tonight. Showers and thunderstorms will be isolated elsewhere.
Our winds are going to be moving from the east to southeast at 5 to 15 knots, and our sea state has a light chop.
And our temperatures for today, we are expecting highs of 88 degrees Fahrenheit along the coast, 93 inland, and 82 up in the hills. Tonight we are going to see or expecting lows of 80 degrees along the coast, 73 inland, and 67 up in the hills. And for our outlook as we head into the middle of the week, for Wednesday and Wednesday night, we're expecting mainly fair conditions with isolated showers or thunderstorms and a few more over the south on Wednesday night. And that is our forecast for today, and we want to thank Cristel Rosales again for preparing that. But we do have a great show lined up for this morning, and we got a lot of interesting conversations lined up. So our first conversation, we are going to be talking about COVID-19, but there has been recent speaking about whether and how the COVID-19 vaccination can be made mandatory, if that's possible. And we're going to be talking about the legal and constitutional considerations that would be involved with implementing a mandatory vaccine. And joining us for that conversation is Professor Rosemary Belantoine, who is a law professor from Trinidad and Tobago, and she'll be joining us for that first discussion.
All right, in the second part of our show, we're going to be talking with representatives, including the Minister of Youth, Sports, and E-Governance, and they're going to be talking about the recently passed legislation in the House, and that's focusing on e-governance and looking at data evidence. So we're going to get the details about that in the second part of our show.
And finally, we are going to be bringing you some of the September spirit because we are still in a celebratory time, and we are going to be talking all about Juve. And we are going to be learning about the process of making mud for Juve with Marsha Smith, who is a legendary mud maker. And we're going to learn all about how to get all the tricks to make your own version of Juve as our final conversation for this morning.
All right, that's what we have in store for you. We're going to go ahead and take a break, but before we do, we got a birthday shout out, and we're saying happy birthday to
Kyle Middleton. So Kyle, from all of us here at Open Your Eyes, we wish you a happy birthday. We hope you have many, many more, and have a great day, Kyle.
All right, let's take that break, and when we come back, we'll be putting into perspective the legality of mandatory vaccinations. Please stay tuned.
It's a fact that with Smart, you get truly unlimited everything. Only with Smart, you get unlimited data anytime. While with the other guy, it's only double data on weekends. With unlimited data every day with Smart, there's no need to wait. So, it's a fact that our unlimited plans beat the competition. Stop being measured and told when to use your data and get unlimited talk, text, and data. Experience the true unlimited plans with Smart. That's a fact. Make the switch and live smart.
Good morning, sweetie. It's time for school.
Are you a teacher or public sector employee who is thinking of owning your new home? Get the keys to your new home with Belize Bank's all-inclusive mortgage, the best financing option in Belize for your new home purchase or construction. Inclusive of all mortgage-related fees, no down payment, affordable terms, amazingly low interest rates. Visit our nearest branch to speak to one of our financial advisors to discuss how you can be one step closer to owning your new home. Some conditions apply.
The TV you love is always with you, from live TV, sports, and on-demand titles. Choose your plan today. Plans start as low as $15 per month. My TV. Entertainment anytime, anywhere.
Working off-site doesn't mean you have to be off your game. Studies have shown that simply adding a keyboard and mouse to your laptop increases productivity by 26%. Add a monitor, and you'll be 35% more productive. At Fulltech Systems, we have what you need to enhance your remote work or e-learning experience. With devices such as headsets, video conferencing monitors, webcams, keyboards, mice, docking stations, all with the brands you trust. Keep connected with collaboration tools like Microsoft 365 Suite and Kaspersky and perform efficiently no matter where you are. Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
And we are back. And if you're joining us right now, we are just getting our first conversation for this morning started. And as we said before the break, we are going to be looking at some of the legal considerations behind the possible implementation of mandatory vaccinations in Belize for COVID-19. And joining us for this discussion to shed some light on those legal considerations, we are joined by Professor Rosemary Bell-Antoine, who's joining us via Zoom from Trinidad and Tobago. Professor Antoine is a labor law and offshore financial law professor at the University of the West Indies, an international legal consultant. Good morning, Professor Antoine.
Good morning. Nice to be here, back in Belize, sort of.
And it's nice to have you join us. We definitely appreciate the invitation. As some of our viewers might not know, you're one of my former professors, so it's also nice to catch up as well.
Great. It's always nice when my students do so well.
Well, thank you for that. But speaking on the topic at hand, I think one of where perhaps we can start is just in the context of mandatory vaccinations, really. A lot of people like to frame this discussion sort of in the context of rights and, whether the government has the right to do it or whether whether any personal rights will be, infringed by making a mandatory vaccine. So wondering if we can start there with starting with the discussion about rights in general and how they work in this sort of a context.
Sure. So I think it's accurate that this is or can be about rights, certainly when you're talking about the state. We say government, but it's really the state. There are a number of rights involved if you are going to try to compel someone to take a vaccine. Your personal liberty, your privacy, it might even be your religion, as the case may be. Mm-hmm. But rights, even the rights that are protected in our constitutions, are really not absolute. We live in a social contract so that our rights can be limited for the greater good, or as the Constitution puts it, including your Constitution, the public interest. So there's a public interest limitation, provided that it's a reasonable action on the part of the government. So there will always be that question, is it a reasonable response to limit rights? And if you don't have to limit rights, because we should always start from the premise that we should try to secure as many rights as we can. I mean, I'm also a human rights attorney, so usually I'm speaking in favor of rights. So yes, we start off with the premise that it should really be the last resort to limit rights, even when it's in the public interest. Yeah. And then it also has to be a proportionate response. So there's another way to go about achieving the objective. And the objective here, of course, is health and safety, protecting the public's health in terms of COVID in what is, by any measure, a crisis of huge proportions. It is only then that we can justify limiting rights. So we always have to balance rights. And then it's not just the individual right that we're talking about here, the individual right of someone who says, I don't want to be vaccinated. There's also the right of the collective, so the collective rights of the society. And also I would suggest in some contexts, the right of persons who are pro-vaccine. Mm-hmm. So if I'm going to work, for instance, and I want to be protected and I know that there are people around who are not vaccinated, how is that endangering me? Or if I have to go to a restaurant and the staff is unvaccinated, how does that affect me? So it's a whole host of rights that are competing, and we have to balance them as a first principle.
Yeah. Well, what's your opinion on that? Because I do think that's such a great starting point. We've heard people champion the idea of their human rights being infringed upon as both sides of the argument. As a member of society, I should be able to get on a bus and not have my health threatened. And also, as a person who doesn't want to get vaccinated, I should have a choice about what goes into my body.
And that's why I started off by saying, yes, we have rights, but these rights are never absolute. They must be balanced. So a court, and even if hopefully we don't have to get to a court, when you consider what human rights jurisprudence is about, it's always about balancing rights, competing rights and interests. And I would want to suggest that in this particular context of COVID, when you balance it, when you weigh it, is no doubt in my mind that the right in relation to the public interest will win out. Yeah. So we have enough precedent, we have enough constitutional provisions, including in your own constitution, that will suggest that when you do balance these rights, that in the end it will be justifiable from a constitutional point of view to limit rights in favor of a vaccine. And the reason is because of the danger, the clear and present danger that is really presented to the entire society. So your constitution, for example, specifically mentions public health. So public health is a justifiable reason. It will be considered to be reasonably required were we to limit rights because of public health rationales. And also, more interestingly, and not all constitutions do this, but your own constitution in Belize also specifically mentions infectious diseases. You can limit rights in order to contain those. So Section 5, for example, of your constitution talks about personal liberty. That can be limited to try to contain and prevent the spread of an infectious disease. And the notion of health, the word health, is mentioned 9 times in your constitution. So in all kinds of rights can be limited in favor of the public's health or general health, including freedom of movement, property, religion, even your right to work, which is unique to Belize. So there's enough justification. And also, I think we know that we've had a long history of mandating vaccines for children. So that came from a case long ago in 1905, Jacobson, and it's been upheld in many, many instances and recently coming back up again, that if it is necessary to do so, yes, it can be justified.
And with that said, on the issue of the reasonableness of the response, how do we assess or determine what is going to be a reasonable response in the particular circumstances?
Right. Great. So we know that I mentioned the word proportionate because proportionality is a principle. Although the Constitution specifically mentions these exceptions, and as I said, I think it is fairly easy to justify. Modern courts always talk about, is it proportionate? Meaning, is there another way you can achieve the objective without infringing on rights? And so what I would suggest it comes down to is the issue of risk. How risky is it if you don't vaccinate, if you do nothing, if the state does nothing, if the employer does nothing? Is it too great a risk? Is there too great harm? And I think that's where the science comes in, because this is one of the instances where law will work in tandem with the science, the medical data. And unfortunately, I don't mean the theories out there, because we know there are many. It will look at the orthodox science or the established science, what WHO is seeing, for instance. That sort of science, which is sort of more traditional. So they will base the question of risk and the question of harm on that established science. And what does the science tell us? It tells us that the only way to get out of the pandemic, really, is to get herd immunity through vaccination, and it's a lot of vaccinations we need. It's not just 10%. It started off, I think 70%, is now 90%. They're saying with the new variants, Delta, that the only way we can beat this will be through the vaccine. So that yes, we have masks, yes, we have social distancing, and we need to do all of those. But the question we have to ask, even if we were to do this, and we are doing it already, is it sufficient to really contain and move away, because we've been this thing almost 2 years now. So that is where I think it therefore becomes a reasonable action, and it becomes a proportionate one. So a couple of months ago, Belize as well as Trinidad, it's quite a few of the countries in the region, we kind of thought we had this thing beaten. You know, we didn't see it seemed to be okay, we were containing it, I think. But then all of a sudden,
here comes Delta.
Yes.
Yep. So, as I said, I'm a human rights advocate. I would always want to go first with individual human rights, but we have to look at the context of what is happening and see it not as coercion or as something punitive, but as something to protect us. And I think that is where the reasonableness will come in.
Let me step back for a moment and talk about your decision to publish the first legal opinion in this region on mandatory vaccinations and the response that you've gotten so far.
Well, that's an interesting question, because just yesterday I was saying, I see everybody's jumping on the bandwagon, because from early in the year, and of course I'm at the university, I was a dean at the time.
Yeah.
I'm now pro-vice chancellor, but we were in management and we had to consider the issue of students, some medical students in hospitals. So I was very strong, no, they need to be vaccinated. You're going in the hospitals and so on. So I'd been thinking about this even before then. Unfortunately, I knew we would get to this point. The writing was on the wall, and I thought we would, at some point rather soon, we would have to be thinking about this issue. And this is why I decided as a public service, because that's part of what academics do, to not just talk about it, but to start writing a bit about it. Initially, even the lawyers, everybody was, rights, there's no mandatory law, so we can't do anything. No, it could never happen. But I think it is clear to see that the cases that we have so far have basically endorsed what I was saying even before. So we've now had the Bridges case. That was the first case in Texas that came after my opinions, where the healthcare workers the court throughout the Methodist hospital, they said, no, you can't be compelled to be vaccinated. High risk, and again, what I was saying there about risk, the higher the risk, the more justified the mandatory vaccine. And more recently, we've had these cases again from the US, in terms of the university compelling students, and then across the world, little by little, government states were deciding to compel, whether directly or indirectly,
Yeah.
because there's more than one way to bell the cat, is it?
Okay.
Oh yes, but at first I was sort of the odd man out, but I'm used to that. This is not the first time. I talked about right to privacy. They said, "Oh no, cannabis," which is the last time I visited Belize was on cannabis. So I'm used to being a little odd man out until things change, and now we see a lot of attorneys giving opinions and so forth, and basically agreeing and saying yes, they agree it's justified in law. So I'm happy about that, but I have also said that it is not, I would have liked to have seen, let us say, more involvement with the unions, the discussion and so on, because it is obviously a sensitive question. And really this is something I had hoped we could have come to in relation to consensus and educating people, but unfortunately it's been very difficult to counter the internet, etc. So here we are.
I'm sorry, I thought you were. Yeah, just to follow up though, that is the legal opinion that you've published. Is your personal opinion the same, that the route that should be taken within individual nations is mandatory vaccination?
Yes, but I mean, I think we need to be clear what mandatory vaccination is. It is unlikely that we can simply say, all right, everybody be vaccinated just outright like that. I think what governments are doing little by little is probably the best approach for now, which is to say you can't access certain services, what I have called soft law. I call that soft law, but it's still compulsory, and we do it already with yellow fever, for instance. Nobody tells you you must have a yellow fever vaccine, but you can't travel.
That's true.
If you don't have it. So I think it's, as I say, I come to the table very cautiously, being a human rights advocate, but I see no way out. And not only that, the longer we delay, what concerns me, the longer we delay, the more lives we lose. Because I think it is now so clear that it is really a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Every day is more clear. It doesn't mean that somebody who's vaccinated can never get sick. No, it doesn't mean that. But the risk is so minuscule compared to persons who are unvaccinated. And not only that, I think the longer we delay, the worse for our economy, because employers are afraid, or if they're not afraid to open up without vaccination, they are also afraid of the costs, how not just how risky it is for their own jobs, but all of the costs involved if people get ill, if people are quarantined, if somebody public liabilities, all of this uncertainty. So we are actually delaying getting our economies back on track. And that is also a factor that courts would look at, by the way, undue hardship. So this is why I am reluctantly, perhaps, and let me just say to you that you probably don't know, but I was in a very life-threatening accident on December 31st, ODS Day last year, so I'm actually still recuperating. And I am still compromised in terms of my whole system, and I was nervous to take the vaccine because of the blood clot issue. Especially the AstraZeneca, which was on offer, and oh goodness, and when I waited, I had to think, well, okay, what is worse, me getting COVID in this situation, so vulnerable physically, or taking the vaccine with the 1 in a million chance of a blood clot? So I had to make that personal decision. So I do understand people's concerns, and I took the vaccine. But I am not sure that I'm seeing a choice. If tomorrow the science says something different, yes, I'll be the first to say, leave it alone. But what is the choice? To do nothing?
And
I don't think so.
And you said something, you spoke about soft law, and then you also spoke earlier, touched a little bit on the difference in the public and private context. So can you talk a little bit more about that and which different considerations might apply? For example, we've been speaking sort of from a constitutional, what the government can do, but also if you're a private employer and you perhaps want to you may be wanting to make it your policy, what considerations might apply in that context?
Sure, Gavin. And as you can see, Gavin is a very good student because, one of the things that I found so odd when this discussion started, even lawyers were talking about human rights at the workplace, and I'm thinking, but goodness, that is not, that can't happen, and we don't have constitutions that apply to the private sphere, except Jamaica changed theirs a bit. So yes, so it's a different conversation altogether. It will come down to the labor law principles in some cases, maybe even admin law, etc. And again, reasonableness, but also contractual terms. And ultimately, again, it's a question of risk, but in relation to the employer's duty to protect health and safety. So there we can't be talking about rights to privacy and personal liberty doesn't exist, except to the extent that Jamaica changed their constitution to apply in some spheres in the private. So that the employer's duty to keep the workplace safe and to keep the employees safe, and also the employee's duty to act in such a way as not to endanger the health and safety of co-workers. That's where we come down to. And there's some discussion as to whether you're changing terms and conditions of employment. No, you're not, because these are already inherent in the contractual relationship, those duties of health and safety. So I started off a few months ago by saying, okay, at the very least, the high risk workplaces or high risk environments. Yeah, so there are some obvious ones, the hospitals, people who are interfacing with the public, restaurants and so forth. People talk a lot about the tourist industry, and that's important, especially when you consider the issue I mentioned before, undue hardship. If I don't vaccinate, I'm a hotel. Is anybody likely to come and stay in my hotel? Most likely not. So what do? Go out of business? But what I would say is that broad duty of health and safety insulates the employer if he or she decides to say, look, you need to take a vaccine to work here. Because I think now more and more it is difficult to distinguish what is a high risk and what is a low risk environment because of the Delta and the other strains. They are just so rampant and so rabid and contagious. So that distinction between high risk and low risk, in my view, is fast disappearing, unfortunately. But so yes, I think the employer can do that, and it will be considered proportionate. The ticklish part, of course, is the question of sanctions and penalties.
But it's not necessarily. I mean, it's not necessarily a new issue, because I think you had also mentioned earlier about the policy, what the policy would be regarding students, and as we were speaking, it also brings to mind that it's in the context of schools and on other institutions we've seen where vaccinations have been required in order to be admitted to certain programs.
Yes. But that was by law, that is by the state. But in the context of the employer, probably the closest analogy is that even before you get a job, for almost all jobs, you have to have a medical. So health and safety is always there, even apart from the terms and conditions, implied terms and conditions of work. It's always something that the employer says to you, you have to be healthy and fit, you have to be fit for work, etc. So I don't think it's anything new that is something that we consider at the workplace.
Can it work in the reverse? If I'm a high-risk patient and vaccination is not mandated in my workplace and it's a high-risk environment?
If you are high, yes. Yes, two things. And we started off saying about it's not just the persons who don't wish to be vaccinated that we need to listen to. There are many who wish to be vaccinated and who wish to be safe, and their voices are not as loud, but just as important. And they're probably in the majority, although we haven't taken a poll. And yes, so why? And most of us have legislation, and if we don't have legislation, it's part of the common law, which is that I have a right to not work if it is that the workplace is too risky in terms of my health and safety. So I can say I'm not coming to work because should I come to work, my health will be endangered. So if a person who wants to be safe and his co-workers are saying no and probably not even wearing a mask, well, hopefully that doesn't happen in the Caribbean, it's more in the States. And I'm really sad to hear the story I was listening this morning about the person who was shot. That again shows you the extreme situation we are in, and we need to get back to some kind of normalcy. But yes, so I think you could be faced with that. The employer could be faced with that. And some persons could say, "Well, I'm not coming to work unless everybody is vaccinated." Or a more common scenario, and it happened to me. I am not allowing anybody to come to my house and render services to me, in my case, caregiving, physio, and all of that, unless you are vaccinated, because you are endangering my life. And I didn't have physio for a couple of months and so forth. I still don't have a housekeeper, for instance, for those sorts of things. So yes, of course.
Have we seen any legal challenges as yet to, I think you call them softer laws, where basically you give people a choice, you get vaccinated or you prove that you are COVID negative? There's been considerations made or discussions had locally that this in itself can be challenged in the courts. Have you seen any across the region?
I saw a threat in Trinidad by the unions, but so far I don't know if it has gone forward. But just last week, I think it was, in fact over the weekend, our Prime Minister announced that he will be, at first I thought, I'm sorry, I have a little hiccup. At first I thought that he was saying it was happening now, but I think he's saying he will be implementing that for restaurants and gyms, I believe, next month.
Yes.
So I think the Facebook, there are people saying, oh, dictatorship sort of thing. But then interestingly, a couple of lawyers came out, including one or two ones who are known for human rights as well, like Ramesh Maharaj, who said, yes, that's perfectly fine with the whole soft law. And we know whole countries have done that. France has done it, Canada has done it, New York has now done it. So little by little, I think in the Caribbean, all around us, this is happening more and more. So, we may have challenges. We have to be clear. People may challenge in courts, and they have the right to challenge. They challenge anything. They can challenge a mask wearing, as they did in the United States, But the question is it likely to stand up in court? And I don't think it is likely to stand up. I think these would fail. But obviously we have to be prepared. Some employers might be a little scared because they wouldn't want to be the one to be the test case. So it is probably better for the state to outline a policy to sort of protect the private sector. Because I know I have been talking to chambers of commerce and so on. I know they are a little scared of doing these things because, they don't want to be challenged in court. Even though they know they might win or whatever, it's not a nice thing to have to deal with that. So that's where we are at the moment.
And something also which you touched on a little bit earlier, which I think you said was a sticky situation, and that was what are the penalties for if such a policy is going to be enacted, whether at the government level, what is going to be the response for persons who choose not to be vaccinated?
True.
So I'm a little soft on this one, I guess, my bleeding heart coming out here. So clearly we have to have exceptions. One is religion, the other is genuine medical reasons, so some people cannot take the vaccine. So that's fine, that would be there. So persons who just simply don't want to, I don't rule out dismissal. I'm not saying you cannot dismiss, that cannot be. But what I am saying to employers and the governments and so on is that it has to be approached really very cautiously and again as a last resort. So what I would suggest, if somebody doesn't want to be vaccinated, they can. If they can work at home and you can accommodate them without affecting your bottom line, because we have to consider the functionality of the workplace and so on, then we can choose that option, let us say, the more humanitarian option. But in some cases, this cannot work or it cannot be sustained. And there are other things you can do. So, for example, we've now adopted this term called furlough all over the world, which is not something we had in our UK system before. But you can have the option of laying off temporarily that person, that I think would be justified as well if they cannot be accommodated. But as a last resort, if it is that dismissal has to take place and you've gone through the due process, you've shown that you've tried to accommodate, you've tried to do this, you've tried to do that, then yes, dismissal is an option. I know some persons feel that, okay, too bad, dismissed, and that is what the Bridges case said, by the way, in America, that, you don't have to work here, so too bad for you, you don't want to be vaccinated, you'll be dismissed, and that was the end of the story. But we do know that in the states, the dismissal laws, there's less protection in dismissal law there. But I think here for us, we need to approach that more cautiously. Interestingly, your constitution, you are the only constitution, well, Guyana has a little bit, but your constitution talks about the right to work, as you probably know. Section 15, a very unique and exciting provision for a labor lawyer like myself. But that is also limited in terms of health, public health. So your constitution specifically says that you can limit the right to work. So you can see that you're not on a very strong ground if you simply object and say, I don't want to be vaccinated.
Yeah.
So the employer will probably try their best to see what else can be done and so on. But let us say too many people are doing that, it may become impossible. So he or she may have no choice but to say, sorry, I have to let you go.
That's interesting. No, I appreciate your point of view in saying, that dismissal should be the last resort. And I know there are quite a few employers who are happy for this clarity. What are some of the gray areas that you think you have been noting in this discussion about mandatory vaccinations?
Right. Well, there are lots of areas generally with COVID and labor lawyer, a whole host of things that have cropped up. But in terms of vaccination, one of the things that I'm still mulling over in my mind, I'm leaning towards one view, but the whole thing of who pays for the quarantine and so forth, if people don't wish to be vaccinated. Now, the easiest answer is, well, too bad, you pay for it. You have to, if you don't wish to be vaccinated, you have to demonstrate that you're COVID-free and you pay for those tests. And you also pay for any quarantine that you may end up with, that you had to be quarantined, etc. But then, there's a little blurry line, because if we say that, yes, there's a duty, the employer has a duty to health and safety in the workplace, you could stretch it and say that employer may actually have to pay for the test. But we do know that the employee also has that duty. So it's a bit of a 50-50. I think the jurisprudence, as much as it exists, is more in favor of the employee having to pay for those things. And certainly also the question of sick leave is something, not just the vaccination, but also generally across the board. That has become a gray area, because sick leave is usually 14 days, 21 days. If you're being quarantined, you may be quarantined more than once. You may use up your sick leave. What obligations should be placed on an employer? Yeah. So we haven't thought seriously about that question yet. It is still something that it's evolving.
Yeah.
It can happen in the context of the vaccination, because, as I said, the unvaccinated would more likely be quarantined or whatever. But it is those sort of little ticklish questions as to quarantines and paying for tests, I think, are still a little
jury's still out.
Well, it seems to me that just in general, this topic, the main consideration will be like a balance between the individual and the collective.
Yeah.
And so would you say that's generally just a fair assessment? And based on that, what are some predictions you might have, just for the region, and how these policies might be implemented?
I try to avoid these things, but I think little by little, more and more services will be closed if you're not vaccinated, and not only that, airlines, I think, will, if some are already there, but more so would say you can't fly if you're not vaccinated. And I know certain Trinidadians love to go all over the place. I know some people spread on television and say, well, no, I took the vaccine because I want to go Canada. Or New York, as the case may be. So, I think there are few people who are genuinely anti-vaccine or anti-COVID vaccine. I think there are a small amount. The large majority of people who are hesitant are simply unsure because of what they're hearing. So they might need a little nudge. So I do think that what the soft law approach is probably going to be what we're going to be seeing a lot of, whether it's a university, you got to come to class or to live on the halls or whatever. The services, the restaurant, the tourist industry is of great concern, I think, for most of the region, including Belize. So I think it is likely that whether the government does it or the employers just simply bite the bullet and do it, as some of them are doing already. I know in the oil sector in Trinidad they have said, and these are foreign companies, you have to be vaccinated. So I think the hotel sector and so on, they will have to do it. They will have to say, look, you must be vaccinated to work here. And little by little, I think we may not get to where a general law saying, like, everybody must be vaccinated. But you will have these sort of
little sectors,
incremental sort of things where we'll achieve it. But it all depends, of course, on how the virus. What is happening in Belize? So where are you now?
We're in our third wave.
And is it worse than before, like everybody else?
It's bad. It's not worse than our second wave as yet, but we haven't peaked. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that is part of it too. I mean, obviously, the more strident the pandemic and the virus, the more people are going to rush to these options. But I do believe that is where we're going to go next. And we probably have already started. And we have moral support from other countries, the soft law approach that needs to be taken, which is justifiable in law as well.
All right.
Professor Antoine, with that said, we are just about out of time for this discussion, but we definitely want to say thank you for joining us and shedding some light on this topic. Are there any closing words which you'd like to make to our viewers?
Not really, just to say to stay safe and let's all pray and hope for the best. And thank you for having me. I love Belize. The last time I was there was when we had the cannabis, and I know Belize passed their law, so you're one in my good books. So all the best and stay safe.
One final question, Professor. How did Gavin do? Are you grading him?
Of course, A+.
All right.
Bye-bye.
All right, you continue to stay safe. Thank you. And with that, we're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Minister Kevin Bernard to talk about the latest developments in e-governance legislation. So please stay tuned.
This COVID update was brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service. Working off-site doesn't mean you have to be off your game. Studies have shown that simply adding a keyboard and mouse to your laptop increases productivity by 26%. Add a monitor and you'll be 35% more productive. At Fulltech Systems, we have what you need to enhance your remote work or e-learning experience. With devices such as headsets, video conferencing monitors, webcams, keyboards, mice, docking stations, all with the brands you trust. Keep connected with collaboration tools like Microsoft 365 Suite and Kaspersky and perform efficiently no matter where you are. Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
At Belize Diagnostic Center, we offer FDA-approved PCR testing for COVID-19. Get your results as quickly as 1 hour. Don't risk getting exposed to COVID-19 by going elsewhere. We take appointments, or we can come to your home or office using our concierge service with no additional fees. We have 10 locations countrywide. Call or WhatsApp us at 613-TEST. That is 613-8378 to schedule your test today.
Smart continues to expand its internet coverage countrywide to help you live a smarter life.
Our villagers are very happy. They are pleased to know that Smart went the extra mile to put a tower in our village so that our villagers can get live stream on their TVs and they can get their kids doing their online classes. I want to say to Smart, thank you for making it possible for us to get internet in Gardenia Village. We really do appreciate it.
Smart continues to take the internet and mobile services to communities across Belize. Now save even more when you bundle your Smart broadband with Smart mobile services. Smart, bringing people together.
Stay safe and submit your sickness benefit claim form electronically. Follow these 4 steps. Step 1. Obtain your medical certificate. At consultation, the doctor certifies your days of illness and provides you with a medical certificate. Step 2. Fill out your sickness benefit form. Complete all the fields in parts 1 to 4 on the front page of the sickness benefit form. Step 3. Request your salaries record form. Contact your employer for your salaries record form. Step 4. Submit your sickness benefit claim form. Scan or take a clear picture of the sickness benefit form, salaries record, and proof of bank account. Email the documents to claims@socialsecurity.org.bz within 14 days. You will receive an email reply confirming receipt of your claim. After the submission of all documents, your claim is processed for payment to your account. For any COVID-related illnesses, contact the Ministry of Health for further guidance. Social Security Board, safeguarding you, your family, your future.
Imagine going through your entire day without the burden and risk of carrying cash on you. Belize's shift to digital wallets has begun with eCash. We can now skip the cash when collecting money or paying for our essentials, all while using a fast, easy, and secure platform. Simply add funds to your wallet via bank transfer or at an agent, and you're good to go. You will be able to make quick, easy payments simply by scanning QR codes. And best of all, it all happens just like that. Payments are as easy as clicking a link online or scanning a QR code. Download the eCash app from the Google Play and Apple App Store today and take your first step into a cashless lifestyle. The future is here with eCash. For more information, visit www.e-cash.com or contact us via WhatsApp at 613-0257 to find out more.
Second conversation for today. Of course, there are some big developments taking place in terms of e-governance legislation. And so we want to start the process of breaking it down for us to all understand. So here we have with us the Minister of Youth, Sports and E-Governance, Kevin Bernard. And we're joined by Alexia Peralta, who is the Director of E-Governance and the Digitization Unit.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. To you all. It's a pleasure to be back on Open Your Eyes. It's been a while.
Yes. Well, we are happy to have you here and definitely to be able to talk about some of the recent developments. So let's get into it. There were 3 bills. I know Friday's House meeting, we talked a lot about what took place with the super bond and now the blue bonds. But let's talk about where we're moving with e-governance.
One of the things, as you know, Marlene, is the government's commitment to digitize services in government is a very critical component of Plan Belize. And in order for us to achieve digital transformation, and I know Alexia will continue to speak on what that means and all that details, is that we need to make sure that there is the legislation, the teeth, that will allow us to do so. And these three major legislation, there's two other legislation that was passed, which the Prime Minister presented. But these three that we presented and was read for the third time in the House, the Data Protection, the Public Sector Sharing Bill, and the Electronic Evidence Act Bill, gives ability, gives us the ability and give the people the ability to move into that digital economy, that digital world. You know, we have always heard of many of the obstacles and the bureaucracy that happens. A lot of paperwork have to go through in many instances. We're trying to change that. And if we are to move ahead with technology, if we move ahead along with the world, this is the way to go. You know, we need to make the ease of doing business in this country from all angles. Citizens, and our focus is mainly on our citizens. Both those who come to this country, but at the same time making services more accessible to a general populace. And so it's critical that we ensure that we pass these necessary legislation that will speak of digital signatures, electronic transfers, and if we go through that, the legislation one by one is a lot to digest. But really, these are the framework that has to be laid down in order for us to achieve the goals we are setting out in terms of our national digital agenda that we want to launch.
So it's a step-by-step basis. My question has to do with what's the level of consultation that takes place with other ministries, because they are directly impacted by the passing of these new legislations.
Well, let me ask Alexia to get into that part, because I know she had been working with the EDC for some time, working on many of these legislations. So I will ask her to comment on the consultation that took place, and I will also add later in terms of what we're doing now to further communicate inter-ministry discussions that needs to be had. No? So.
Right. Thank you, Minister. So yes, certainly, you know, with the introduction of any new bills or the modernizing of any new bills, it's always vital for us to be able to consult, not just within government, but outside government, because many of these bills will impact us individually as a citizen of the country. So these bills have been through an extensive process of consultation. It's taken over a year now, and it was done really and truly under a project that was executed by the Inter-American Development Bank and coordinated to the Economic Development Council under the Office of the Prime Minister. And it began in 2018. So we're about almost 3 years in ensuring that this bill has really considered everybody's viewpoint. We consulted with the banking sector, with the legal practitioners, with citizens, with the public service, all to ensure that the bills and the provisions really ensure that we're not creating any further obstacles for anyone, and of course ensuring that we're always protecting the rights of our citizens. And that's the essence of these bills, ensuring that we're now giving citizens the right protection as they begin to interact more on the digital realm. I mean, today we interact on our phones every single day. It's part of us. We can't do anything without it. So we need to ensure that we're protecting our citizens as they continue to evolve, and as we as government continue to transform ourselves in using these digital technologies.
Let's talk about the privacy issue. I think it's interesting because the laws happen now, but there's kind of been a small bit of digitization taking place in little nooks and crannies. The BHIS is a great example. The health, I can't remember the specific name, Belize Health
Information
System. Yes, thank you. Where your data is stored kind of in a hub, and it can be accessed from other places, which is great if I get sick in PG because they know my treatment here in Belize.
Right.
But it's also looking at the lack of protection that exists for my data that is now in this platform. Let's talk about how you find that these types of privacy issues can be mitigated by new legislation.
Right. I think that's an excellent really issue that you have highlighted, because that was one that I was going to mention. So ideally, the data protection bill is meant to strengthen the data protection regime in country, in how we use personal data, the processing of that sensitive data, and one of those sensitive data is being ideally your biometric data, your health information. How does a citizen have the right to ensure that that is their data and to ensure that all the protections are being put in place for them? So the lawfulness and consent of the processing of that information is there, that the citizen has the recourse, the legal recourse, in the event that their right is violated. The Data Protection Bill really offers all of that provisions in place, and it's based off of the GDPR, which is an international regulation on data protection, as well as the Public Sector Data Sharing Bill, which now will ensure that as government, as we share information, we're doing so within that data privacy law. So even if we're sharing information of any citizen that's collected through any system, it is still following that data protection right. So we're now putting in place all of those building blocks to ensure that we address some of these concerns that citizens do have, and we understand that. So these bills are critical and important for us as citizens, for our protection to be there, but as well to facilitate the data sharing. Because like you said, imagine if you were in Dangriga and you have a medical emergency but your information cannot be attained, then how does that health practitioner know how to really attend to you? So those are some of the issues that we want to ensure that are addressed, and ensuring that we can facilitate the flow of information.
And critically to what Alexia has mentioned to Marlene, when I read and I discussed some of the details of that bill, when you look at the public sector data sharing, it repeatedly stresses there, and I think it's clause 4 and clause 6 of the bill, speaks of health and private information, personal information that must be protected. And that is the reason why it was also stressed in the data protection bill, because that was one of the big concerns. How am I going to be protected in terms of my health information? You know, while certain information should be available in terms of your health, it must be protected. It's that person's privacy, and so the bill speaks of that very clearly. So I must say that when you look at these things, and talking to some of the, in fact I spoke to a senator yesterday, and over the weekend I was speaking to a business person, and they've been saying, you know what, we've been needing this legislation for some time. So I think we're in the right direction, we're moving in the right direction, and in terms of these major legislations.
And you know, apart from the protection, since we're on the topic of the public sector sharing, in general, I think that is a really interesting bill. And you know, I guess for the benefit of our viewers, you could describe what are the main aims behind the bill, and how the legislative provisions sort of achieves those goals.
So the public sector data sharing bill is, as a country, we're actually one of the few in the region to have a public sector data sharing bill. And the essence of that bill is to facilitate the sharing of information between government entities, trying to achieve the once only principle. And what that really means is that, let's say I go to the Vital Statistics Unit, where they hold all my birth data, but I also need a service from the Ministry of Health. But some of that piece of information is already collected from me at the Vital Statistics. So having the public sector data sharing bill will allow that sharing of information within a protected regime to ensure that key sensitive data is being protected, that the right of citizen is being protected, but at the same time, it's addressing the concerns that citizens have of every single time I go to a government entity, I need to supply my information all over again. So that is really the essence of it, to ensure that while we're sharing information, we're complying with a citizen's data protection right, and to ensuring that we are utilizing data as a resource for policy making. So the more accessible data becomes for all government entities, the more we can begin to use these data to make decisions. And that's what a digital government is about. It's about beginning to be data-driven, making policy making based on evidence. So it's beyond just creating and digitalizing services. It's about looking at a very holistic picture of how, as a government, we transform the way we operate.
Yeah, and it also, I mean, it goes back to one of the core elements of moving towards the digital era, which is just the ease of doing business.
Right.
You know, rather than jumping from Vital Stats, the passport office to I don't know where else.
Police, criminal record, and all these things.
Yeah. So all of these things can be maintained. Let's take it back to another institution. When you think of things like CETO and their investigations that they do and monitoring that they do, how does this complement their work?
Well, I could just probably explain the role and function of CETO.
Yes.
CETO being the Central Information Technology Office is really mainly an IT arm of the Ministry of Finance.
Yes.
They are there to more deal with the smart stream and payment options of government. While our unit now, the e-governance and digitization unit, is tasked to ensure that we move the digital part of government services. So CETO does a lot of the hosting, the protection, because we have to look at cybersecurity, we have to look at all of these things. And so as we go developing these changes, these are the things that we have to start to implement more and strengthen, because there's a cyber crime, there's a cyber crime act. We may have to also look at how we enhance that bill. But definitely CETO plays a significant role in terms of being the, you would say, like, for example, I mean, being the cloud for government data. So a lot of the different departments or ministries will normally host their hardware there, and all the data are protected there. So our unit work closely. We'll have to work closely, and we are continuously working closely with CETO to ensure that those things are, the interoperability is there, the connections is there, but we have to ensure that every other ministry is also connected to that network. So Alexia could probably add more in terms of that discussion that they have been having from a technical standpoint.
Yeah, certainly. But it's beyond CETO, really and truly. Right. Looking at all ministries now as the custodians of data, because the data isn't ours, the data is for the citizen. And that's what the Data Protection Bill really highlights. You know, it's your data, you are the owner of that data, the government is the custodian. So the Public Sector Data Sharing Bill actually also speaks to the principles in how we should manage information, how we should share information. The Data Protection Bill talks about the processing, how do we process those within certain principles. But beyond that, when you think about the risks that always exist with having information available, of course, is where the Electronic Evidence Bill now comes to strengthen that legal framework. Because today, again, we're more connected, we face more risk of cybercrime. But at the same time, we have to be able to supply the legal practitioners with the right tools to be able to present in proceedings. So the Electronic Evidence Bill strengthens the use and regulation of digital evidence. And digital evidence could be a personal document on a computer, an instant message, an email. All of those things are digital evidence, which will now
media post?
Correct.
Yes,
which will now be admissible in court as it relates to any cyber crime that would be presented. So it also strengthens our judiciary system.
And that's what I found interesting, because I can see this tying so closely to one of the common issues that we talk about, which is cyberbullying. Right. So if somebody threatens my life online and says, you know, watch out, whatever, I have evidence online. Correct. Is that now admissible based on this bill?
Yes.
Well, the bill speaks of it, but you also have to be able to understand that in the bill, the person taking the matter has to prove the legitimacy of that that post. So there, it's also making it's a very tight bill, but yes, that will be something that you will be protected through these legislation.
And looking at the landscape that we're in, I know that there's a whole lot of catching up when it comes to just living in this digital world. And the challenge is that we have a mixed community. You have people who are still very traditionalist and they use minimal digital services. And then you have some, and I think there's no greater example than the recent electronic wallet that was launched. Right. You know, this great uptick from one percentage, and then the rest are like, oh, well, I don't know, is it safe? So how do you manage that from an e-governance standpoint, where people will still want some services traditionally, and some are just hoping, listen, can I just do it on my phone?
One of the things Alexa will add, one of the things we have constantly have this discussion, and I'm totally aware, and one of the key things that we have to ensure, if we are going to digitize services, government services, then we also simultaneously as a country, as a government, need to look at how do we ensure that the citizens have access to good internet service, provided not only at a district level, but at the rural communities. And we are looking at different options on how we can get these things to our people. So as a government, we have to look at the investments. We have to talk to these service providers to ensure how are they expanding, how are they going to be working with the government strategy in terms of making internet access available to every citizen in this country. Now, as it relates to those who are traditional, now, when we look at the digital, I'll take vital statistics, for example, a key area, department that needs to be digitized. And we are working closely with the Attorney General's ministry to see how quick we can get this process going. Alexia today will be meeting with people from that ministry to continue the dialogue and set out their plans, the implementation plan. Now, if we have to digitize vital statistics, it's wonderful. Sounds great. On the front, we need to make sure that there are training, there's access, there are people that have access to the services, but there are individuals that still indeed may say, you know what, I don't know how to use this thing.
Or I don't want to.
Or I don't want to use this thing. So I'm sure that there will still be some need for us to, at some point, to be able to still have a form of that manual process to be able to maybe may not be in the fact that that person will go to vital statistics still. But if you have digital labs, for example, set out in the different communities where somebody from government, an officer, is available to be able to assist that person to fill out the processes, those are the things that we're saying when we talk about accessible to individuals. Because if you're going on a digital platform, you have to be able to make sure that it works. I could see where, like land, for example, Ministry of Natural Resources, a land application, that simultaneously can have both for the beginning. But your end result is that your goal and your vision is to make sure that everything goes digital.
It's like a transitional
so we have to look at that transition indeed.
I mean, we see it. This even with the media. You have people who are still using antenna. You have people who are relying on cable. You have people who want it on Facebook. And then you have people who say, no, I want it on YouTube. It's the different layers, and we try to meet all. My question is, how do you meet all?
Well, there are different approaches to it. One of those, of course, is, as the minister explained, closing that digital gap. So ensuring that there are right training tools for our citizens to learn what it is to use a platform, the technology, because many times we're afraid of the unknown, of not knowing how to use these devices. So being there to support what we then call, closing that digital gap, providing the right support for citizens at all levels, so senior citizens, youths, even youths at risk. So they're all levels that we need to really focus on, and we need to partner with key entities within our ministry as our Department of Youth Service, for example, but even outside with the Ministry of Education, for example, with the Ministry of Human Development. So there are various partnerships. But besides that, from a digital service perspective, we need to ensure that we're building services that are user-driven. So understanding the customer, understanding the different users of these services, and how do we facilitate it and make it easier for them? How do we ensure that it's a platform that isn't confusing for them? So those are elements too that you have to consider, that we consider a priority to ensure that when we're designing a new services, that it's really what the citizen needs, their perspective, and understanding that these happen at a phased approach. So maybe having a citizen submit an application via PDF is a big step for them. So maybe immediately jumping them into doing a full online platform might be too much. So it's understanding the culture and the context that what we really live in, and trying to design those services based on that. So the culture is one of the most important items that we always speak about.
Of course, yeah.
And especially in Belize, understanding the different cultures in different areas, and even thinking about, you know, designing based on different languages, etc. So there are different elements that we can look at.
And I think your example of like a hub or assistance unit, for me, it took me back to when the US visa system went online.
Right.
There were all these businesses that were created to kind of assist people who couldn't do the process alone online.
That's right.
And maybe an e-governance type satellite hub is set up to assist those who may need help.
And this is why I mentioned that, because it will be very critical as we start to roll out these services digitally, that those platforms are available for the citizens to be able to access. But I also wanted to touch on something very critical, because we're talking about the citizen accessing. Now we have to also understand that we're talking about government service. So the culture within the public service also has to change. We need to fix that too. So the public servants need to also get up to speed in terms of the use of technology and the services that we want to implement on a digital platform, using the concept of digital transformation. So it goes both ways.
Who
there's a lot of
that
training.
Well, that was going to be my next question. So we jumped the gun a little bit, but I wanted to know what the uptake was like and what the response has been like among the relevant people in government who are going to be having to be the ones dealing with this sort of technologies. Is the response so far positive?
Before I get into the response, and Alexa will do that because she's the one directly communicating. This is why the internal interministry dialogue is very critical. We'll be meeting with the Ministry of Health, we'll be meeting with the Ministry of Education, we'll be meeting with the Ministry of Natural Resources, the Public Service, Ministry of Finance, because we have to make sure that everybody is on the same page. It's critical. Public service being also one of the main discussion areas that we will have this discussion. And as we setting out the national agenda, the digital agenda, which we will be soon be presenting to the Prime Minister, I must say though that the Prime Minister is very much committed in making sure that this government digital transformation goes and is effective. And it's all about promoting open government, good governance, and it restore some trust in the public service for the people and citizens. So that dialogue has to continue. And Alexa can point out to the many responses that has been coming in terms of when she has been reaching out to these various ministries.
Right, I think prior to COVID-19, the response and uptake was slow because it wasn't seen as a necessity. You know, we're so accustomed to using paper, and that paper is the way to do my job. But now with COVID-19 and having to have that social distance measures, there's certainly a shift in culture in the public service and now the need to use technology. As a matter of fact, I think I'm flooded with requests of different ministries interested to see how can we transform our ministry, how can we begin to use these types of technology, and going back to the most basics, for example, using like Excel, using like Word. So using these types of technology.
Fillable forms.
Yes, fillable forms, correct. Microsoft Forms,
Locked
surveys.
fillable forms.
Right. So these are things that I think we would not have really seen be a highlight until, unfortunately with COVID-19, it's a need now. And as they always say, right, the invention,
the mother of invention
is necessity. Correct.
Right.
So I think that that's one of the key aspects here, and certainly there's been greater uptake. But with that, there is the need to continuously do a lot more training. Because again, like I said, having the knowledge of what a tool is, but having the knowledge to use that tool effectively is really different. So we are planning to do additional trainings within the public service to ensure that we are providing everybody the right tools to
Yeah.
be able to use these.
And efficiently, because
Yes,
data entry
yes.
can be time consuming.
Yeah.
So that's one of the questions I have. I don't know if you're tackling it as yet, but what about all the archive
That's what I
data?
think too.
What about the stuff that's already only on paper that will eventually have to be entered into new systems? Are you going to do a start from here and move forward, or are you going to take some time to kind of get the backlog into systems?
Well, I have my own view on it, and I know
Okay.
that I've discussed this as a.
This
as
is always
minister
a challenge,
responsible.
yeah.
Yes.
I think, and I will go back to vital statistics as a perfect
Yeah.
example. A lot of these files, as you know,
Yeah.
in fact, when you looked at the news in earlier years, you have reports of where some files are people applying for birth paper, they can't find the records and all these things. So there's a challenge there. But I believe that if we are going to move into a digital era, we need to start from somewhere.
Yeah.
There can be two things happening at the same time. You start the digital process, while in the back end, people are updating those records. And so, because if we are to wait for us to update all these records and get them on a digital platform, and they don't like to use the word platform, but on the digital service area, then you're going to waste a lot more time. We are going to talk about maybe down 5 years to get where we want to. So, for me, from my perspective, I think vital is critical.
Yeah.
And so you always use that as an example. So we have to find a way that we can have some digital service
Yeah.
to that department and other departments, while at the same time, in the back end, people are updating those records to ensure that when we get there. And so reaching out, doing these mobile clinics in terms of getting access and data is also something that has to be discussed and looked at in terms of when we move these services forward. So I totally support that simultaneous move in terms of having something digitally and at the same time getting those manual records up to date.
Yeah.
Right. I think we, as a country, we have a lot of catching up to do when it comes to the digital government. So certainly many things will have to be running in parallel. If I take a recent case, for example, with the business companies registry where they digitized their records, it really was run parallel. So while new application was coming in, those were already being digitized and placed in their record system, while in the back end there was a team that was digitizing the old records. So we need to consider that these things have to be operating parallel, because if we're going to wait until we can digitize all the records, it's going to take us a ministries. I mean, there, for example, the Vital Statistics Unit, which has an entire vault. We still have the Belize Archives that has its own storage unit. I mean, if you go to these places, you'll see the amount of paper that has been used over the past. So digitizing those and using the right equipment to digitize those would also be necessary. But there's nothing stopping us today necessarily to be able to begin to digitize some of the new records that are coming in. But with this is providing the right tools to the respective ministries. So having the right electronic records management system, because digitizing it is one thing, but being able to utilize the information
and share.
And share the information.
Correct.
Correct.
Exactly. So the same thing with these legislation.
So if you see our bills come around once more with ensuring that data is a public resource that can be used, but it needs to be done within those principles that ensures that there's protection for the citizen.
So what's the next step?
So the next step for us as the e-governance and digitalization unit is doing, as it relates to the bills, is doing a full national educational campaign. We expect to begin that within the month, and it's really to be able to break down these bills so that citizens can understand how it impacts us, so that they can understand their right, and they can also understand how I as a citizen can protect myself, how I as a citizen can be proactive. So we'll be doing a complete educational campaign. We want to partner with multiple entities, both public sector, private sector, the NGOs, because it's a bill that's far-reaching. What we're doing is a system-wide change, and that requires a lot of education and awareness, and we want to do that for a very long period of time. But beyond that, the unit itself, being one of the newest units in government, we are finalizing our national digital agenda, which we hope to do a very public launch. So again, so the citizens can know what we're planning to do for the next couple of years to support you as we continue to move digital, and how we will seek those partnerships with citizens, and how we will involve you in that process.
Marlene, if I could just point out some of the, maybe 5 of the things that we believe are critical to look at. Vital statistics is one, as I keep repeating that. Police records, you know, these are services that every day you see people lining up to get. So the vital statistics, the police records, land application, Alexa talked about the company registry, and the 5th thing that we are saying that we need to ensure that we develop a national digital ID. And all of these things has to feed into that, you know, while simultaneously also working on other ministries like the Ministry of Health and the, I mean, we are in the pandemic talking about, I know the discussion is on the table on a COVID passport and all of these things. So, but for us, those are some of the 5 key things that we would really want to see looked at and focused as a priority. And while other small projects will be coming, will be happening at the same time, but from our perspective as a government, the vital statistics, the land application, police records, company registry, and getting that national ID.
Definitely. And I think, you know, especially if you remove yourself from thinking of living in an urban area, what it takes if you're coming from a rural area to access these type of documents, it's a matter of equality as well. But Minister, before you leave, just very quickly, let me ask you to wear your Minister of Youth hat for a moment. I know yesterday you were one of several political leaders who spoke out against the recent shooting of BDF Private Jesse Escobar. Let me just get your sentiments this morning.
Marlene, I am still outraged of what I saw. And nobody can change my mind in terms of what I saw on the video. What hurts me most is that this incident occurred in front of a child, a 3-year-old girl, young baby, seeing her father shot to death. Murdered, as I will say. Whatever may have caused that irrational decision by that soldier does not warrant the need for such action. I was not there, but what the video shows, it's obviously that there could have been other means of approach. And so I am calling out that we need to ensure that justice is prevailed. I believe that the authorities need to do this in the right manner. Let no stones unturned. That family needs to get justice. There are some other discussions I know that will have to come. The militarizing of the police and all of these things that are other discussions that has to happen to see how we fix this problem. But definitely I'm very much outraged of what happened. That should not happen. Never should have happened. No child, as I said in my post, no child should have ever have to suffer that type of situation. So I know it's something that is sometimes emotional to talk about, but I want to offer my deepest condolences to that family, and I hope that justice is served.
Well, thank you very much for coming in this morning and for sharing those final words. Definitely quite a bit happening, and we look forward to hearing more about it as your education campaign rolls out as well.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
All right, and with that, we're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we're shifting gears entirely, talking about how you can celebrate Juve at home with your family. So please, stay tuned.
Whoa, Dad. Thanks. Got it.
You're welcome, sir.
Download the eCash app today and take your first step into a cashless lifestyle. For more information, visit www.e-cash.com or contact us via WhatsApp at 613-0257. eCash, the future is here.
As one of the largest cable and internet providers in Belize, CBC strives to provide our customers with the highest standards of quality, value, and service in all aspects of cable TV and internet. Monitoring our systems closely, our technicians combine creative planning and state-of-the-art technology with years of experience and training to develop and provide the most reliable and advanced cable and internet service to exceed your expectations. For CBC and our team of talented engineers, technicians, and customer service representatives, delivering less than the very best is never an option.
Stay safe and submit your sickness benefit claim form electronically. Follow these 4 steps. Step 1. Obtain your medical certificate. At consultation, the doctor certifies your days of illness and provides you with a medical certificate. Step 2. Fill out your sickness benefit form. Complete all the fields in parts 1 to 4 on the front page of the sickness benefit form. Step 3. Request your salaries record form. Contact your employer for your salaries record form. Step 4. Submit your sickness benefit claim form. Scan or take a clear picture of the sickness benefit form, salaries record, and proof of bank account. Email the documents to claims@socialsecurity.org.bz within 14 days. You will receive an email reply confirming receipt of your claim. After the submission of all documents, your claim is processed for payment to your account. For any COVID-related illnesses, contact the Ministry of Health for further guidance. Social Security Board, safeguarding you, your family, your future.
Working off-site doesn't mean you have to be off your game. Studies have shown that simply adding a keyboard and mouse to your laptop increases productivity by 26%. Add a monitor, and you'll be 35% more productive. At Fulltech Systems, we have what you need to enhance your remote work or e-learning experience. With devices such as headsets, video conferencing monitors, webcams, keyboards, mice, docking stations, all with the brands you trust. Keep connected with collaboration tools like Microsoft 365 Suite and Kaspersky and perform efficiently no matter where you are. Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
And we're back. And if you're joining us right now, we're getting our 3rd conversation for this morning started, and we're shifting gears completely, and we're talking about Juve joining us for this topic, and we're going to be learning about one of the most famous parts of Juve, and that is the mud making process. And we have a pretty famous mud maker here. We have Marcia Smith and Warren Smith as well. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And
Juve lady and Juve boy. All right.
That's the whole.
Good morning. Yeah.
And thanks for joining us. This is of course it's September, so it's that time of year when people want to celebrate, and one of the favorite ways that people like to do that is through Juve.
Yeah.
So of course, mud is a very iconic part of that. But before we get right into that, can you talk a little bit about the celebration of Juve and what it means to you, why you like to be involved in it?
Well, for me, I can say Juve the whole meaning behind Juve, the word Juve itself, first of all, it is spelled Jouvert, or it can be spelled Jouvay, but it is a broken down version of the word, of the French word jour au vert, which simply means the break of dawn or day open. And that is the why we start Juve at 4 in the morning, and you party a little bit up until sunrise, because then you have to break dawn. And that is the meaning behind why you celebrate Juve at the wee hours in the morning of Carnival morning, because Juve is the highlight of Carnival. Without Juve, Carnival can't happen.
You know, it'd be nice, like, you know, enjoy it, because, okay, from like in 2001, I think you all guys remember that Carnival had died.
Yeah.
It was going down, right? And Central Bank and the people, them, BTB, they decided let them come together and start a Carnival. So they said they're going to give us a starting fund to let us bring out the Carnival alive. So 2002, we come out freestyle. It wasn't a competition. And same time in the meeting process every day with the committee and everybody, Miss Sarah just looked at me and said, I have a good thing that you guys can do too to bring back Belize Carnival and everything, something added. So when she looked at me, she said, Marsha, and it fits you. So I always have to applaud her for that, because it's her that gave me this job that I'm doing right now. It's like a job, it's a hard work. And she said, Marsha, it's Juve. He said, and I know you can do it. He said, but I don't know how you guys going to do it. So I come up with my own idea. I went home and I think. And I told my brother, I said, let's go with me. Look how this one red clean. Let's start come up with this idea, fun for the Juve. Well, we started it in the evening. We only had 90 odd people. It was so boring, but it was calling out people. And I can't believe the other year I said, let us do it in the morning. We tell Nitch, because Nitch was the one that took it over now. Let's start doing it in the morning. And so when we started in the morning, I can't believe it gets so big and great.
That makes so much sense, because I was watching this video and thinking to myself, man, it's in my lifetime that I see Juve gone from something small with just Carnival, people who are going to be in Carnival starting early, and then it just explodes. I mean...
It's the explosion for me, because then why the explosion? The people don't mind participating in Juve. If you notice, you have the young, the old, you have people that say they can't even go in different eras still participating in Juve. You have everybody participating in Juve. But why? It's because if you notice, all different colors but one mud. All of us is under one mask, and that is part of the history of Juve. That's why nobody is not afraid to partake in Juve. Juve is the biggest parade in Belize, bigger than Carnival.
That's right. That's right. And early morning, even people who never wake up early, they up at that hour or they stay up all night.
Yeah, that's true.
But Ms. Marsha, you missed a very important part of the story. Why they looked at you and say perfect for you?
What do you mean, like?
When they said the perfect thing for you to do, because you like party early morning?
Because, no, why she looked at me? Because she said that I always have a lot of ideas. That's why she told me, because every time, like, if we doing some fundraising or doing something to bring, like I said, bring back the Carnival, me and Miss Marina and us, we always come up with some ideas. So she just pointed at me and said, she know I can do it. And from then, you know, from 2003 until now, God bless, it's getting great. Only because this year we can't do nothing, so we decided let us do it at home.
How the idea of home came about, because everybody know.
He was the one who said, Mom, let's do this home, you know, make them people buy their mud and do it home, and I'm okay then.
Last year must have been pretty depressing for you.
Last year it was very depressing. Sorry, it was very depressing last year. Like, we are a family. We don't used to win
September. We making costume because we have the Soca Mocha Carnival.
Very active, very
and then
active.
they over one side of the yard making costumes. We on the other side doing our Juve mud. So the yard and the area is just so active and hype every year. That's
and
why,
last year, it was so dead. My mom was at work, and the evening when she came home, she was
Friday evening,
I'm not feeling this. He said, turn on about Panama.
We have too bad Panama.
We make it for ourselves. We made it for ourselves, and then like people just saw us on Facebook and passing by, and they was like, Miss Marsh, make go enjoy it home now, please don't leave it. And I had like,
we give them one. It was.
And so that's how the idea came around this time. Yeah. So what's it been like since you started selling the mud? You don't normally sell it. It's just there when you get out.
Last year the same thing. We gave it away.
Yeah.
Last year we gave it away, but the reason why selling now, because everybody, they knows about Juve but don't know the hard work that we put in to get these mud. And it's not a little bit of mud. If Juve
and every day people come and ask, every day, even for the mask, because you could use it as a facial. You keep your skin pretty, like if you rub it on your skin and you do so, you see like it look like a face powder. It comes so pretty.
True, but
and left your skin so nice.
If COVID wasn't here and we were supposed to have Juve, my mom and I and our family would have started buying mud from June up until Juve morning.
Till this week.
Up until Juve morning. So that's the length that
and
we
the hard work that we go
through.
through with it.
So then my mom wasn't mind giving people the mud because it's something that we love to do, and then we was doing it for ourselves. But then mom, hey, it's COVID, we got bills. We need to, and then it's reasonable. It's reasonable for people because it's just for them to enjoy. That's why we carry it from $3 up until the bucket for family sale, so you can put your money together and get a bucket for you and the family.
$25.
So that's the point.
So have you been surprised by how many people have come out to get their own Juve for the family?
Yes. I kinda, because I can't believe people will come buy it now, knowing that we used to give it away for free because it's from too niche, the committee, or the carnival committee then. And nobody looking at us, and we want to have fun, so we decided let's do it this way.
Now, I want to be clear because we saw a story over the weekend where there was a gathering and people were out in the street.
We heard about it.
You are not advocating for people to do it.
No.
You want people to do it at home.
If you have your family, it would be much better because safety right now is a priority of life. So if you are interested and you want to be safe and you want to be with your family, you could purchase the mud and have fun at home. Let Granny and Grandpa feel it for the first time, and then I'll go Juve morning.
That's true.
Let them have fun home with you all, sit down and never run and laugh. That's about it. We can do nothing more. We can't go parade tent day. No. We can't go nowhere night. So party home.
That's right.
Buy your drinks.
Just to add on that, Miss Marlene, I just want to make the public know that my mom and I, we are not selling the mud for people to go out on the street and do Juve. That is not what we are doing the mud for.
Juve is not
COVID is very crucial here in Belize. As if you notice, Belize City has the highest rate right now with COVID, and it's just to keep the September celebration live and keep us remembering, all right, when September, this is our cultural, keep on being patriotic then. That's the whole point of Juve. Not to go out.
Even go out and stone the vehicle on the street or disturb people that passes by. That's not Juve. Juve is about go out, put your mud on, dance up, have your fun, and when you're done, you rinse off, go home and bathe and relax.
Yeah, and know that you live it up for the morning, right?
Yes, that's Juve. So one more thing I would want to say to our Belize people, if you get your mud, I'm begging you, you can still wear your mask, sanitize your hand, deal with your people straight, because last year I had my bucket of water at the gate when I had 300 people in my yard. Chester didn't stop me, nobody didn't came to my yard. And my bucket set with my water, my pipe, and I sit down in a corner, and everybody walk in and say, wash your hand. Wash your hand. Wash your hand.
And no, we don't want that. We don't want too many people at our
I have kids and everybody have kids at home. We don't want the kids to get caught up in this sickness.
You can do the same home.
Yeah.
We have to be on the safe side.
And that's why I wanted to ask you, because I know that when people saw that video, they think one equaled the other. But I heard your story. Your story was clear. This is not for people to go and break regulations and try to juve.
Exactly.
This is for you to do what we've asked everybody to do. Do it safely at home with your loved ones.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, you have been, I want to hear the story behind this mud. There's a rainbow of mud here.
Yes, what's I'm actually interested because, you had earlier said that on a normal year or whatever, you would start this from months before September. So what's the actual process like with the creation and the colors on the mud and stuff?
Well, we started, we just started to buy mud. We know this was for our home. And then my son come up with the idea. Because I stay with mud. The socks, I got them every year. If Carnival Juve done, I still have. Because I make it for our face. So I told him, I say, we're going to get the drums, we can buy the mud. So we start like a month now to buy the mud. So I don't know if the whole Belize and get the crowd will come out. we have on right now home on the fire heart. Yeah. But we don't know if the whole Belize and get. But first come, first serve.
How much you used to do on let's go 2019, 2018? Because people, if they've never done Juve, they have no idea how big it is.
2018, I could remember 2018 because my mom is aging. Everybody know my mom is aging.
She doesn't look it. That mud work great.
She still looks good. But she can't do all the hard work again. So then Juve must go on. I mean, without my mother, no Juve at Belize, I guarantee. So we have to take on that legacy, and Juve must go on at Belize. There is no doubt.
Something that we love.
Juve must go on. So I am here taking on my mother's legacy.
Juve boy taking over for Juve lady.
Yes, that's the thing.
So then when you are ready and she handed over, you'll be the Juve man.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you never answered my question though. What's the most mud you've ever made for a Juve?
Sometimes we get a whole half truck.
Truckload.
The truckload, drop it right down my head over the fence.
And dump it over the fence.
It's that much?
A hill of clay.
You don't know.
Oh my god.
Sometimes I can't stand to me how you look like I can't if we do that carnival done that way I do sometimes. But we love it,
Why do you think people love Juve so much?
I guess like I said, the mud really, when carnival morning and you go out to Juve and you put on your mud and go home and bathe, your skin looks so different for carnival, you look pretty.
To me, I think people love Juve because of, alright, for carnival, and many of the guys get stigmatized that, guys don't dance carnival and in costumes and whatnot.
So the guys, they have fun in the Juve because they don't want to dance in costumes. So
like I said,
bring out a lot of
the old, the young, everybody partake in Juve. So I think everybody loves Juve because Juve is free and you can do whatever you want.
Early morning, have fun, just go out and have fun.
Nobody could recognize if you have that mud.
And man, even the gang boys, the gang bangers, they go out and the other one, and I know the other one, and the one, I know the other one. That's why, so now when few times in the parade, and I thank God many times they don't have no fight in the Juve. But the one or two few times Juve fighting, I think that just people were idler. They really know that one. Somebody pinpoint that one and that accident would have happened. But I always go out every time, every year, and I pray that no problem with nobody out there. Just go home, go out there free, and go home free.
But to catch back with your question now about the process of the whole coloring, well, we, like my mom said first, we get the mud, we go and dig for clay, red clay, and then we boil it on fire hard. We boil it on fire hard. So you have to look for your firewood. First, we used to go and pick up bottles on the street. Now, we have to buy the bottles.
We buy the bottles because we're selling it, so we buy the bottles.
Yeah, it makes sense. And then, when the mud is boiled, it will boil for like 3 days until it comes creamy, because that's the way we want it. If it's not the way we want it.
3 days you left it to boil?
Yeah, 3 days. That's why I tell you it's a lot of work, because like this morning before we came, I went out and I started pick up firewood by the neighbors' yard. Because my neighbors, they always give me firewood. So then they holler for me, I tell you, no Juve. Yeah, we got board for you. I said no Juve where we are do. But now they got board for me. So you know that the fun night, then we have to go pick up the wood. All of that. So right now when we go back home, the same thing.
You have to keep on stirring it.
And the more stir it come better and better and better, like if you cook.
And then we, after it done boil, and it comes to how we want it, I mean you have to let it cool for like a day because it's really hot. But for us now, people think it's really hot.
You know,
yes, it's really hot. But when
it's hot like that how it burns.
You see how my mom stirring it?
That flash for me, I mean get burned. Kind of burn. You have to jump on you, cool your skin right off. Cool.
I want to take your word for it.
It's cool. But don't sit behind it because then that's where it
But when it jump out on you, you don't feel it hot.
And I mean,
you come out to get cool on your skin.
The mud, the clay is something that, alright, we don't know what's in it. It had a lot of different particles in it. So you have to strain it, and the straining process is a long process as well.
You have to strain it fire, strain it again.
I mean,
like
sometimes
3, 4, 5 times.
Yes, sometimes 5, 6 times we have to strain it in different containers to get it clean. And then that's the process of how we strain it. After the straining process, it then comes the colorizing process.
Then we put in the coloring.
But the colorizing process now, we have our own little colors that we mix together to get different, because
we bring
the mud.
So if we have yellow and green, we have mixed that to bring blue.
Okay.
Or, you know,
the mud doesn't take any color in it. So you have to mix and match color to give it a high color in the mud, and that is what we do. But then that's not the whole process. I mean, you have a little.
All your secrets
exactly,
now, right?
Exactly.
But I mean, this is like you have it down to a science. I mean,
right? I had no idea it was so long.
Yeah, I didn't know either. So I mean, that's super.
So where people
really
could get their mud?
Exactly.
At 11 Dolphin Street, we're by the Rogers Stadium.
Everybody know where Miss Marshall is.
Miss Marshall, and everybody know where Carnival Camp is.
All right.
And I guess the public can contact me. I'm Warren Smith. The public can contact me at 654 5238. People, come out, enjoy on a celebration, get on the mud, enjoy.
At home and stay safe.
All right, there you go, Miss Marshall. Thank you so much for coming in. And as you said, you have bottles from?
We have bottles from $3, $5, $10.
Bucket if you want.
We have the $3 gallon. We have the gallons for $25, and then we have the bucket for $75. So I mean, if you don't want a bottle and you want to party with you, cousin, and
everybody
uncle,
put up $5, $10 together, and then you could get a bucket and do a family thing.
All right. Well, thank you for coming in and telling us about it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you
we
for
are
inviting
Miss
us on your show.
Juve. Me and he included, right?
Yeah, sure.
You do Juve?
Yeah.
That's right.
Sure. Well, I'm sure about you.
I have done Juve. I do Juve every year.
I mean, thanks for the Belizeans that come out and support us and make everyone feel the love of Juve. I hope you guys
enjoy
can get
your
the chance
September
to feel
celebration
like
with all we under our fire, because it's fire we're under with this COVID. So let us not let it burn us. Let us enjoy ourselves for the September celebration. Happy 21st and 10th, Belizean. Enjoy.
Thank you. And with that, that's the best close. We'll take a break and we'll be back in a few. Nice.
Is always with you, from live TV, sports, and on-demand titles. Choose your plan today. Plans start as low as $15 per month. My TV, entertainment, anytime, anywhere.
Imagine going through your entire day without the burden and risk of carrying cash on you. Belize's shift to digital wallets has begun with eCash. We can now skip the cash when collecting money or paying for our essentials, all while using a fast, easy, and secure platform. Simply add funds to your wallet via bank transfer or at an agent, and you're good to go. You will be able to make quick, easy payments simply by scanning QR codes. And best of all, it all happens just like that. Payments are as easy as clicking a link online or scanning a QR code. Download the eCash app from the Google Play and Apple App Store today and take your first step into a cashless lifestyle. The future is here with eCash. For more information, visit www.e-cash.com or contact us via WhatsApp at 613-0257 to find out more.
Belize at 40. Hopeful hearts, steady hands, together we rise. The entire SMART family wishes all Belizeans a safe and happy September celebrations. SMART, bringing people together.
Great Belize Productions, Channel 5, proud winner of 5 Caribbean Media Awards for 2019 and 2020. Best Television News Item, Best Responsible Coverage of Children's Issues, Best Health Education Journalism, Best Television Commercial Spot, and the People's Choice Award, with special mention by the jury in the Best Television News Item category.
Working off-site doesn't mean you have to be off your game. Studies have shown that simply adding a keyboard and mouse to your laptop increases productivity by 26%. Add a monitor and you'll be 35% more productive. At Fulltech Systems, we have what you need to enhance your remote work or e-learning experience. With devices such as headsets, video conferencing monitors, webcams, keyboards, mice, docking stations, all with the brands you trust. Keep connected with collaboration tools like Microsoft 365 Suite and Kaspersky and perform efficiently no matter where you are. Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
Getting our show wrapped up. I want to say thank you to all our guests. And we started off the show talking about mandatory vaccines and the constitutional and legal implications that would be involved if the government or even your employer might decide to pursue an action like that. And we spoke with Professor Rosemary Belantoine from Trinidad and Tobago, talking to us about some of the trends that we're seeing in the region, internationally, and what maybe we might be able to expect on that frontier.
Yeah, no, I mean, really interesting conversation. I know that she had put out her legal opinion on mandatory vaccinations, but what was really an interesting element is talking about how, when it comes to the workplace, it's a different scenario than talking about kind of just what constitutionally is allowed for in our laws. So fascinating conversation. Of course, we know that she is well known in the university sector and of course in the Caribbean. So we really appreciate her taking the time to share her expertise with us this morning. And then we also want to thank Mayor Bernard, as well as the new Director of E-Governance, Alexia Peralta. Minister Bernard, for coming in and talking about the e-governance legislations that have been passed and kind of the goals that they have set out for the digitization unit.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to some of that happening. That was a great conversation too. And finally, I want to say thank you to Miss Marsha and Warren to come talk all about their mud making process for Juve. They are selling the mud for the first time, so you can enjoy Juve at home with your family. And of course, that was a great way to end our show, you know, to get into the September spirit, because even though, you know, we still are under COVID-19 regulations, we can still celebrate in our own ways.
At home with your family, please. We got to say it. And you know, I'm glad that they said that, because it's so unfortunate that they took an idea they went ahead with the idea to create the mud for people to do at home, but then people broke the regulations. So I'm glad that they made a firm stance to say that that's not what they're doing it for. It's for you to enjoy safely at home with your loved ones. And clearly, a family that is so passionate about what they do. And that was really the refreshing part of the conversation for me.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's almost been a 20-year journey on her part, and you know, it's great to see you know, members of her family growing up in it and wanting to continue the legacy and to expand. So you know, we wish them the best. And of course, if you want to get your mud, you can contact Miss Marsha for that.
That's right. Or pull up on Dolphin Street, but she says get it early because it's been selling out pretty quickly. So that's it for us, though. If you would like to contact us, send us an email at oye@channel5belize.com.
You can find us on Facebook as well at Open Your Eyes BZ, and on Instagram at OIE Belize.
And remember to tune in tomorrow morning at 6:30 when you open your eyes.
Start your morning right.
Until then, keep your eyes, your mind,
and your heart open.
We'll see you soon. Enjoy your evening.
Inamulelua wagia balisinaya osi wabilido aba sukube wagia moswagendo lwagule hali unta wedaye moswagendo lwagule hali wedaya.
Este es nuestro Belice, nuestro hogar y nuestra nación. Así que juntémonos como un solo pueblo y late con un solo corazón. Pongamos fin a la violencia.
Open Your Eyes was brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.